Hello and welcome to week 11 of Music Appreciation. First, this week I am posting the assignment for our final project. Your literacy assignment this week will be focusing on finding sources for the World Music Project. These sources need to be academic in nature, and therefore sources like Wikipedia and Google are insufficient. This assignment will need to be in the Chicago Manual of Style for citations, and a tutorial can be found at the website shown on screen. For the author, you will need to find a name in the article itself, or if the author is unknown, your citation should be in the following format: owner of site, title page, date last modified or accessed, and finally the URL. Moving on to the next composer, Arnold Schoenberg, and the Viennese Serialist movement. Like I said last week, almost every composer from here on out will have a distinct style and larger movement they contributed to. As Schoenberg created literally an entire new system for composing, we will discuss that last and get into some of the theory necessary to understand what he wrote. For now, let's dive into the life and music of Arnold Schoenberg. Born in Vienna, Austria, Arnold Schoenberg was the son of Orthodox Jewish parents from the neighboring country of Hungary. Schoenberg was almost entirely self-taught, only taking lessons for violin at age 8 for a short time. His major two influences early on in life were Johannes Brahms and Richard Wagner. When Schoenberg was 16, his father died, and Schoenberg needed to work to support his family as a bank clerk for several years. At 21, Schoenberg would leave this job and fully devote himself to creating music. Schoenberg's first job was as a choir director for metal workers in Vienna. He orchestrated operettas, or short operas, for popular composers of the time as well. His original compositions were met with sizable pushback from the conservative Viennese audience. Again, Viennese just describes people from Vienna. It's used a lot through this video, so I thought I'd clarify. One music critic suggested that Schoenberg be put in an insane asylum without music paper. He began teaching music theory and composition in Vienna in 1904. Two of his students, Alban Berg and Anton Webern, would become prolific composers themselves. In 1908, Schoenberg abandoned the tonal system that all music had been written in and created a new atonal system in which to compose. From 1908 to 1915, Schoenberg produced an incredible amount of music, a textbook on harmony, wrote his own librettos for operas, and entered his own paintings in an exhibition of German expressionists. For the following 8 years, amidst World War I and other hardships, Schoenberg did not publish a single composition. From 1923 to 1925, Schoenberg published pieces using his newly established 12-tone system, which organized atonality into a system known as serialism. Schoenberg and his students' serialist compositions would become known as the Second Viennese School. The First Viennese School was responsible for creating the tonal system as the world moved away from the modal systems of the medieval and Renaissance eras. The Second Viennese School was a complete departure from the teachings of the first, but we will discuss exactly how those lines were drawn in the sand a little later. His serialist compositions were not popular in performance, but were widely respected for their ingenuity by fellow composers. In 1925, Schoenberg was named the director of the Master Class in Musical Composition at the Prussian Academy of Arts in Berlin. This period of recognition would be cut short by the Nazi seizure of power in 1933, when he was dismissed from this post. At this time, he and his family fled to Los Angeles, where he worked as a professor at the University of California in Los Angeles, or UCLA. He received few performances during this time and retired at the age of 70. Schoenberg was fully aware that his compositional techniques were too advanced for his time, saying in 1947, "I am quite conscious that a full understanding of my work cannot be expected before some decades, and I know that, success or not, it is my historic duty to write what my destiny orders me to write." Following his death in 1951, the 12-tone serial system was adopted by composers throughout the world. The composers that inspired him so many years earlier were the main source for his departure from tonality. Composers such as Wagner, Brahms, and Mahler were the exact type of music Schoenberg aimed to avoid. He knew the importance of his work, saying, "I claim the distinction of having written a truly new music which, based upon tradition as it is destined to become tradition." His music can be divided into three main periods. First was his late Romantic period, followed by a section of free atonality, and finally his 12-tone atonal works. The late Romantic period sounds exactly as the words indicate, with the drama and emotional expression of the late Romantic period. Free atonality indicates compositions free from the tonal system, but not really organized in any meaningful way. The 12-tone atonal works used his new method of composition. Let's look into how atonality in the 12-tone system works a bit more. Beware, lots of terms, patterns, and math are ahead. Beginning in 1908, the term atonality is defined as the absence of key, which evolved from Schoenberg's emphasis on chromatic harmony and liberal use of all 12 tones in the chromatic scale. In his middle free atonality period, all 12 tones were used without regard to their traditional ties to major and minor tonalities. This free atonality period is described as the emancipation of the dissonance. Dissonance refers to sounds previously seen as having some tension that needed to be resolved. In Schoenberg's free atonality, no resolution was necessary. His best example is his piece Pierrot Lunaire, which is a setting of 21 poems. In Pierrot Lunaire, Schoenberg utilizes a tone color melody, in which the sense of melodic content is transmitted through the performer's timbre more than the notes themselves. Pierrot Lunaire also utilized a technique called Sprechstimme, or speech voice, where the performer is halfway between speaking and singing. This creates an eerie quality to the music and an otherworldly, inhuman treatment of the notes. Created and used mainly from 1914 to 20, the 12-tone system is an organization of atonality that tries to create a systematic method for composition. The pieces featuring 12-tone serialism utilize each pitch numbered from 0 to 11 before that pitch is repeated. It can be seen here on the 12-tone clock. Once all 12 tones have been used, this is established as the tone row. This tone row may be manipulated in several ways, but the first iteration of the tone row is referred to as its prime form. From there, you can invert the prime form by flipping all of the intervals in direction. So if the notes in the prime form began by going up, the inversion would begin by going down. You can also perform the prime form in retrograde, meaning that you reverse the prime form. You start at the end of the tone row and you work your way back to the beginning. The last manipulation of the prime form is the most complex and is a retrograde inversion. To create a retrograde inversion, you first invert the intervals and then perform those intervals in retrograde motion. All of these manipulations center around an axis of symmetry. For instance, if you use inversion on the prime form, you flip everything over a horizontal axis. If you use retrograde on the prime form, you flip everything over a vertical axis. And if you are using retrograde inversion, you first flip over the horizontal axis and then the vertical. You will need to know how to manipulate the prime form for our second exam. Our two listening exam pieces feature Sprechstimme. The first is Mondestrunken, or Moondrunk, and is from the revolutionary Pierrot Lunaire. The second is A Survivor from Warsaw, Opus 46, and tells the story of Holocaust victims, and specifically one survivor telling his tale. As a final note, let me extend all of my sincerest condolences to the lives lost in the Palestinian and Israeli conflict due to Hamas. If anyone wants to talk about anything happening, feel free to reach out to me or join my virtual student hours. And that's everything. Schoenberg was a true revolutionary that understood the rules of the first Viennese school, but outright disobeyed every single one of them, as he and his followers created the second Viennese school and the 12-tone serialist system. Get your assignments in and be sure to format your citations in the Chicago Manual of Style for our literacy assignment this week. I look forward to seeing the cultures you have chosen and learning alongside with you.